Okay, we're live. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 125 of the Security Podcast, Security in 30 on the In30 Network. Today, we want to talk about upgrading your stuff. And it's strange on one hand, and we tell you this all the time, always upgrade. And on the other hand, when we talk about Windows 10, we say, maybe not. You're good with Windows 7. So, Tom, what gives?
Well, it all depends on the type of updates you want, the type of updates you'll put up with, and whether or not those updates are actually really necessary. Because sometimes, and we see this a lot with really fast-moving applications that are constantly getting released, that sometimes the latest and greatest isn't really the latest or the greatest. Have you ever updated an app on your phone and you launch it and you're like, this is now draining an insane number of battery life. I lost all the footprints on Pokemon Go. I don't know where any of these creatures are. And now I actually have to walk around my neighborhood like some kind of degenerate looking for the Poliwag that I need to complete my Poliwrath so I can finally take this gym. But that might just be me.
No, that's not just you. That's a lot of people, especially
a lot 15 million other people.
A lot of the teenagers on the corner that I wish they would just get off my lawn.
Is there a Pokestop on your lawn?
No.
Should I come by your lawn?
No. I don't want you by my lawn. And I found out that it's within my First Amendment right to put a sign. We think all landmines have been cleared off this property.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Or just have a drone, just circle, just get it on a thing to just go around with a camera saying we are videotaping you.
Can you get like a wireless charging pad for drones yet? Can you have that thing land and charge like a Roomba and then take off and continue its patrol?
No, that would be awesome. But I think the battery pack for the drone is enormous. So 23, it takes a lot of battery.
Like I said, project.
On my drone, the Phantom 3 Pro, it spins so quickly that if you put your finger in there, it may just take it right off.
Good God.
I mean, it seriously puts a wind tunnel straight down. So, well, yeah, Pokemon Go is a great example. People updated it, and then bad things happened. I mean, specifically, the spoofers got mad that they could no longer spoof, and I don't know what footprints are, but yes, they got rid of those.
So, do you update? And in general, my answer is yes, update, because you don't know or you don't care or it's just too much work to decide if something's a security update or just an average old update or a bug fix update. Just update it because you don't care. I don't care. Who cares? Just update it. And I think on average, that's good advice. On average, you want to always update, but what if you don't? What if you want to stick back with Windows 7? What if you don't want to jump into Windows 10? What if you don't want to update every time an app update comes out or an application update comes out? What do you do then? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
So let's give some good examples. So the big update conundrum was iOS 6 to iOS 7. Where iOS 6 had the skeuomorphic design and iOS 7 was flat, and flat apparently bothered a lot of people. And people said, I don't want to upgrade, I'm going to hold on to this. And I had to tell them, hey, look, there are going to be security updates. It's going to make it faster. Yeah, but it's going to look different. Yes, you'll get used to it. That's actually a blog post. I'm seeing this a lot. Silicon Valley forgets that people memorize button layouts, and by changing their icons or designs, people forget what they look like. Not everyone understands all these things. So sometimes I tell people, don't update if it's going to take you forever to relearn this button design.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What if you do care about holding back updates? Now, if you don't care, if you say, well, I'm not really going to look to see if this is a security update, if this is recommended, if I really need this update, if this is going to keep me safer. If you're not going to do the due diligence to figure out if this is just a feature update versus a security and bug fix update, you can skip this episode. The lesson for you is who cares and always update. But if you're going to do the due diligence, if you're going to actually dive into these things and look at, what will this update get me? What will skipping this update do to me? Then we can carry on. So for iOS 6, for any major operating system update, you're going to have a lifetime on it, or support dates where they say, hey, from the time we release it to this point in time, we will give you security updates, bug fixes, hardware compatibility, stuff like that, stuff that you would expect from your operating system. But as of this date, those things will no longer apply to you. And this probably sounds familiar. Probably the phrase "end of life" comes to mind when you think of Windows XP, because Microsoft famously said, "Hey, look, Windows XP has been out forever, and we're done supporting it as of this date and time, unless you pay us a lot of money for the embedded version or for certain enterprise patches if you can't upgrade." So for governments and stuff like that, or if you change a registry flag and make yourself look like an ATM. But that's beside the point. Right now, if you're running Windows XP and you haven't done the weird registry hack, you are no longer getting security updates. We talked about this a long time ago, and we talked about it pretty in depth. But it's the end of life of an operating system or an application version is pretty universal. People will move on, they'll build bigger and better things, they'll have new themes to go with your new operating system, and they'll say, hey, as of this date, you have to update, or all the broken stuff is just going to get worse, and all the security holes are not going to get fixed. So do it, or you're on your own. And just about every giant application has got valid support dates or lifetime dates for the operating system.
So another famous example, so we talked about iOS 6 to iOS 7, was Skype for the Mac. So Skype for OS 10 way back when was just a simple list with green, yellow, and red to signify available, maybe, and not available. And then there was a major update that just added stickers and buttons and ads specifically.
All the ads.
And integrated it with Live and this and that, and you had to create a new account. And people were posting the binaries of the old versions, the DMG files, to go back. And at some point, everyone lost it because, I mean, now it's probably 4 years old, and they had to upgrade. They got a new machine, something happened. But there's an example of a company saying, you should update, and people said, why? It works. There's no security bugs. In fact, if you read through Skype, it was basically, yes, now Microsoft, compared to eBay, owns it, and now the NSA backdoor is put in. They didn't come out and say that, but if you read through it. On the other hand, you know what? Updating it made the call quality. It did make the call quality better. It made video. You can now do video chats. So there were features that people wanted and needed, but there was that huge pushback. So, like Tom and I said, if you don't want to read and you don't want to figure it out, just update. Just let the computer do it. Don't say I'll do it tomorrow. Just do it now, and you'll be much happier.
And now that we are now that people are getting more comfortable with software, with computers, with beta testing, with always changing environments, because Facebook every week changes their layout, and Google is always putting out or shutting down one of their projects. We've all gotten a bit more comfortable with an ever-changing computing environment. And companies are starting to take advantage of that. Developers really like that because they can say, hey, for those people who want to stay on the cutting edge, on the bleeding edge, they don't mind the bugs so much. They just want to see what's next and be prepped for it and really have the latest and greatest out there, even if it's not perfect yet. We're going to release stuff in a beta channel. We're going to put out, the Android N update. So if you apply to the beta channel, you will get the latest version of the Android operating system right now. Apple has done the same thing with their iOS beta channel, where you can set up to be a developer and get the developer beta, or just wait till the consumer preview comes out and install that. I almost said OS 10, but Mac OS now has had betas out and available for a long time. So people could try it. They could make sure their applications work on it if they're a developer. And you get to brag to everyone, hey, look, I've got Leopard installed on this, and it doesn't come out for another 6 weeks. That kind of stuff. Should you take those? And the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. In some cases, there's going to be better security features. Like in later versions of OS 10 or Mac OS, Apple included some more gateway steps, some more application watching to prevent you from installing anything truly nefarious. I'm not going to call it antivirus. It's more of a blacklist than anything else. But it was a step above, what was there before, which was nothing. On the other hand, you are installing brand new software. And if there's one constant in the universe, it's that software has bugs. There are going to be issues. There are going to be new security flaws because of some feature that some developer put in unwittingly, knowing that they just opened up a backdoor into the system. It happens. It's not, I don't want to say it's not anyone's fault, because it is, but it happens to everyone, right? I write software. I write buggy software. I write terrible software. Sometimes it's okay. Sometimes I make mistakes that introduce security vulnerabilities, and we fix them as fast as possible, but it does happen. The point being that the less you change something, the more you hammer on it, the more you try to secure it, and then the less new stuff you add to it on top of that pile, generally the more stable and more secure your software is going to be. Now, that's not an absolute rule, but in general, that's what's accepted.
So on the Mac side, what the classic recommendation is, never upgrade on the .0 release. So I think we're on 10.12. 10.14, I can't even remember. Whatever Mac OS Sierra is, when it comes out in a month or two, just the general rule of advice is, if you want to go for it, it's going to be fine. But if you have critical applications, make sure all of the applications you use and you need to use for your job or whatever are compatible. Sometimes they're not. And the usual recommended rule of thumb is just to wait till the 0.1 or 0.2 release. That's going to fix the majority of the bugs that happen. What happens to most people, and it's hard to explain this to them after they've done this, is they install an update that should work. It's just a monthly security update, whatever it is, and something breaks. And now that break caused them money. They had to go back to the store and get it fixed. They lost time. They had to take off a day of work. They couldn't turn in their paper. And now they will now never update their computer again. My sister had a Nexus 5. She upgraded it to whatever security release it was, and it broke Bluetooth. And no one could fix it. It was out of warranty. And she goes, "That's it. I'm done updating. I'm never updating again." And I tell her, that's not, you had a bad case. It does happen. And yes, Google should be fixing it, but they didn't. And so now she's trying more things, but still she's very hesitant to update. So we tell people, you get the update. It may break something. Give it a few days. If you want to wait, but don't wait too long. And then we get into the Verizon setup. So with Android, they push out the update. Android N just came out yesterday or the day before, and now all the companies are testing it. The last in Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint one is a whole bunch of phone calls. So what they do is they wait for the update to be released, then they wait for the manufacturers to make their versions, and then they do every test they can, because every phone call to them, they lose money.
Yeah, and you can, especially with big updates, with stuff that people are going to have, like Android N, like the latest version of iOS, like the latest Mac OS version to come out. You can sit back and wait a little bit. Now, if it's a critical security update, if someone says, hey, there's this shell shock or Heartbleed vulnerability thing, you might want to get on those updates. Don't wait on the big stuff. If you know there's a security patch to address a big public vulnerability, a big 0-day that just dropped, don't sit around and wait for other people to test it. Just go and get it. Just install it. Be done with it. But for like the big operating system patches and stuff like that, hang back a little bit. Give it a week. Look at TechCrunch. Look at the various tech blogs out there. Go to Engadget. See why, if people are complaining or why they're complaining. See what devices they're complaining about. See what carriers are complaining about. See if you have this version of your MacBook and you upgrade to this thing, it becomes slow as a dog, because that has totally happened before. And it'll get fixed. It might just take a little bit of time. I know with Windows, people generally wait till the Service Pack 1 release of a new operating system before they jump onto it. that started a long time ago, but Vista really cemented that, where everything in Vista was completely broken, and then Service Pack 1 came out, and it was slightly less broken and sort of usable. And then 7 came out, and everything was okay again until 8.
Well, look, same thing just happened with Windows 10. They just released the Anniversary Edition, and from what I'm hearing, they took out a lot of the privacy issues we had. Now, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it made things faster, and overall, the update was seen as a net positive, and it just so happens to happen the day after they dropped the free updates. But that's a different story.
Yeah, there are some bad things about the Anniversary update, including getting rid of the registry tweaks to curtail some of the Microsoft analytics gathering, spying, whatever you want to call what Windows 10 does to you. It's the same thing Android, iOS, and Chrome OS do to you anyway. Just a hint. I don't like it, personally. I don't want to run it, but I understand why they're doing it. But that was another show from another time. But, with Windows 10, they don't give you the option. They just say, by the way, there's going to be an update happening, and you're going to get it regardless. Kind of how they installed Windows Update or Windows 10, regardless of how you wanted it or not. Windows 10, no, I don't want that right now. I'll just click the X. And then you come back a couple hours later and, what is this? I've got Windows 10. Yeah, you thought you had a choice in this? No, you don't. You really don't. And yes, I know you could find the little blue text and say, no, I really don't want to. But come on, who does that? There have been enough calls and enough really nasty articles about Microsoft flipping that bit. It was bad.
The issue becomes, for most people, we're talking about really nitty-gritty privacy things. At the end of the day, your ISP has a lot of this information. If you're trying to be really secure and everything else, then yes, you have to spend the time researching and everything else. But for the most part, the security updates are going to be more in Windows 10, and Windows 10 is going to be more hardened, but that's the trade-off you make. And yes, that's why we tell you, you know what, stick with Windows 7 for a few more years while it's still being supported. But when it's done being supported, you do have to move. You can't just sit on Windows 7 or Windows XP forever.
Yeah, and for all the bashing we give Windows 10, in general, it is safer than 7. They've done a lot of great hardening in Windows 10. If you overlook the Microsoft analytics gathering and what they're grabbing from your machine, it's really a pretty nice security update over Windows 7, even down to the kernel level. So I don't want to rag too hard on it, but other operating systems don't give you, and programs don't give you the option. They just update. Chrome. Have you ever been bugged for a Chrome update? If by bugged you mean sometimes you'll see the little notification and it just went away the next time you launch Chrome. Yeah, that's how Chrome auto updates. It just sometimes you'll get a new version of Chrome and you never know it because you're on the stable channel. So Chrome has actually got 4 channels of updates, and most people have only seen just one, and they don't even know it's an update channel. They just know I installed Chrome and I never had to touch it again, and that's great. Chrome does this awesome auto update thing, and the reason it's so rock solid is because they have the notion of upgrade channels. So you don't just have the beta channel and the everyone else channel. Chrome has got stable, and they've got this testing channel that if you want to see what's coming next, you get on testing, and then they've got the developer channel. I think their testing channel is beta, is what they call it. Then they've got the developer channel where you can see the pretty bleeding edge stuff. Like you'll get an update every couple days.
Canary.
And then you've got Canary, which is hey, we put out a nightly build, which is we hacked on this stuff all day yesterday. We're not even sure if this thing runs. But if you want to test it out, here's Canary. And it's updated as soon as we push the update, as soon as we hit the button, as soon as it gets to our servers, you have it. And it is the most bleeding edge, most unstable version of Chrome you've ever seen. But here's the kicker. This is why it's so important. Because Canary users find bugs in Canary. Well, those bugs get fixed. They don't make it to the dev channel. The dev users, where there's a larger number of dev users, figure out and find the bugs in the dev channel, and those get fixed before they get packaged up and sent along to to the beta channel. The beta channel users, they see a couple bugs. They don't see a whole lot because in the previous 2 stages, it got really cleaned up. It got really polished and tightened up. And then by the time it hits stable, you have worked out the vast majority of these big breaking bugs that would have affected a huge number of users. But instead, you took your bugs and you put them on the people who are developing, are testing for you, understand that there are bugs and understand how to report them and report them well. And by the time it gets to the average home user, your bugs have been completely cleaned up. It's not 100%, of course, but the vast majority of the bugs have already been taken care of. It's great.
But the problem with Chrome is that you have, I don't want to say you don't have a choice in these updates, but sometimes, because Google is really bad at these visual updates, and I'll give you an example, you open it up and you say, wait, what happened? And
all your stuff is moved.
Yeah, it's moved. It's not really moved. It's moved. It's where like Chrome is deprecating apps. And if you don't know what that means, which it means nothing to most people because most people never ran apps on Windows or on OS X. I run apps all the time in my Chromebook. They're getting rid of it for something else. We don't know what that something else is, but they're going to do it. But my biggest complaint, and I share this in the WhatsApp group, is they de-greenified, if that's a word, the lock button next to the HTTPS. They made it very, very thin, and you can't tell if it's black or if it's green, because we always tell someone, look for the green lock. They got rid of the EV toolbar and making it all green and black text. They made the text green, and it's a white background. It's just very, very hard to see. And I said, this is probably a bad design that they'll eventually change. But like the home button changed and the refresh button slightly changed. And I just have to field calls all day from people who don't know what they're doing. And I said, no, that's what happened. And they go, why did they change it? Why did they do this? And I really wish Chrome and Google would take the average person into some of these testing channels and say, no, I don't like this. Just stick it with it. Don't change it.
And there are some applications that, and websites too, really, that haven't changed their look or their functionality since they were born. Reddit is a prime example for having a UI that was extremely functional, but it wasn't the prettiest thing to look at. And you can even go to Reddit today, hardly anything's changed. A little bit of polish here or there, but everything's really in the same place. And it's actually pretty significant for a website to not change their layout. It's frankly amazing. Now, if a program does that for too long, you end up with some of the programs you see on Android today that you look at them and they're just horribly ugly. And that's literally because they were built for Android like 4 or 5 versions ago, and they're still using the same color palette, the same theming. And it looks terrible. It's perfectly functional. It just looks bad. Developers are like anyone else. We like our bandwagons. We like our hype trains. We like gossiping and figuring out, what's the coolest, most hip thing we can do today, and then redesigning the whole thing. Take our wonderful Rails application that's beautiful and monolithic and it's one code base, and we write everything in JavaScript and these little node modules, and now we've got 14 micro applications and microservices that are talking to each other, and then it all breaks, and we figure out, we ask ourselves what went wrong. It's, well, we tried to be too cool too fast.
So to combat a lot of this, Apple made their iOS 7 guidelines. Apple has very famously their own design guidelines. So if you're on a Mac, all Mac apps look identical. iOS apps, they're more identical than they used to be, but they have their design guidelines. Android, Lollipop, KitKat had Material Design, which is now 2 or 3 years old at this point, which most apps have now moved to, and most Google properties have moved to. So they're starting to understand that we need to follow design guidelines. And I'm no designer, so if you can do it, that's awesome. Most people are trying to figure it out, and it does help me. So with those updates, you absolutely want to do, but it's just when I don't know where I was going with that. I was saying design guidelines, but if the app says, okay, now we're on Material Design or we're following the iOS 7 guidelines, you generally want to move up to it. It's going to standardize layouts. So when you do move between the two, everything is okay. I want to ask Tom, FreeBSD hasn't been updated in forever, or just the design hasn't been updated in forever?
FreeBSD has I will put this nicely, they have a very conservative design. Now, so you will get, like you've seen, with Reddit, with certain applications you use, that their interface has just never changed. It's always been the same, but they keep coming out with bug fixes and stuff. Some things are engineered. They're not grown, right? With most applications, and I write applications like this, I would hardly consider myself an engineer in the engineering mindset. I'm a hacker. I just throw stuff together and hope it works. And look, it's shiny now. Sweet. Half of it's broken, but whatever. I don't need that other half. Linux and most applications are grown. It's you've got an application, and you bolt stuff to the end of it, and I think this looks cool, and we'll tweak this here, and look, now it's nice and shiny. Where BSD is very much engineered. It is thought about. We've got clear design goals. We have these sets of guidelines. We have these sets of standards. We have this perfectly constructed blueprint of what we want this system to be, look like, and operate as. And then it is built to those exacting specifications. When you install BSD on anything, or like when you pick a flavor of BSD, when you pick FreeBSD or OpenBSD, and you install it on your toaster or your refrigerator or your server or your desktop, you know exactly what you're going to get all the time. And the updates aren't willy-nilly, we think we're just going to do this thing. When you update BSD, it's a very logical progression of, we fixed these bugs. This is now a new version of the application which adds this flag, which is very useful to these people. And we got rid of these security holes. And it is very conservative. It's definitely a less is more ideology. And it's really nice, because if you used BSD 15 years ago and you install FreeBSD today, not a whole lot has changed, right? You've got some new tools, you've got some new utilities, but the things you wrote back then are pretty much going to work the same way today. And certain applications, certain websites will try to maintain that. And I think of it as a breath of fresh air. Now, there is the middle ground where you say, well, I don't want to have the same thing for 15 years. I like a little bit of variety, but mostly I want stability. And that's where you get things like the Ubuntu long-term support releases for desktop and server. So they say, hey, you install this, and for the next 5 years, we're guaranteeing you bug fixes and security updates. Now, your applications aren't going to change too much, and especially with Debian Stable. 3 years, you're going to get basically bug fixes and security updates only. That's the only thing you get. There are no feature updates for Debian Stable within reason. Some things get feature updates, but not very many. And Ubuntu long-term support is following in that path too. It's great because you can choose the very stable channel, but you're not stuck with it for 15 years, right? You're stuck with it for 3 to 5, and then you upgrade to the next long-term support release, and it's new and shiny, but it's going to be around for a while. And if you want something a little bit more crazy, Ubuntu's got their standard releases, and Debian has got their testing and their unstable track, which you can follow. I follow the unstable track personally because I like the latest and greatest, and Debian Unstable is pretty stable for most things. I've only had a couple little issues, but Debian has got rock solid stability, and it's pretty legendary. It's not BSD legendary, but it's pretty legendary.
So I just brought that up because they are, like you said, legendary in the fact that everyone has they have to agree to put this release in, and all these features are done by committee and everything else. So I wanted to bring that up. Whereas OS 10 for the longest time was 2 people saying yes or no, or 1 person. And Chrome is just everyone saying yes, getting a whole bunch of features and then removing them later, and we go from there. So at the last minute, I guess, just to wrap up, if you can update, for the most part, absolutely update. You can wait a little bit. Don't wait too long. Just go for it. The monthly patches, they're always a good thing. And talk to the manufacturer. Talk to the app. If you think an update's needed, call up Verizon and say, hey, when am I getting Android N? When am I getting Android M, for that matter? When am I getting my monthly security releases? In other parts, just the best thing to do is always read about the update, see if you need it. But for the most part, the general rule of thumb is yes to updates.
Yeah, and if you're still on Windows 7, you can make sure to install. You can just say, hey, only install critical or security updates, only install recommended updates, or install all the updates. And you can choose, what kind of updates you want. And if you go down the, security and recommended updates, that puts you in a pretty good place between the most stable you can be while still getting security patches. But you're not going to bore yourself with having the same features all the time. So there is a middle ground there. And if you haven't tried it, I completely and utterly recommend Xubuntu. The Chrome you use on Windows today is the same Chrome you'll use in Ubuntu. So give it a spin.
So anyway, everyone, we will end here, and we will see you next week. Have a good day.
See you, everyone.
Bye.